Hey there, folks. So, last episode we went through and we set up the dynamic tick rate for our stat line's stats, so that it's all based on how long a day is in game. And that's so if you have a 30-minute day or a 300-minute day, they, like your hunger and thirst and such, tick down at a respective rate for that. So, this episode, though, I do want to work on the stat line some more, and I want to actually expand it for what I like to call complex needs. Now, this is something that's only going to really be for the player character. I don't want to go through and have this on every single stat line because it's going to overcomplicate things. But to do that, we're going to close out of the editor. I'm going to hop back into Visual Studio. Now, I will be honest about this part. I have tried to do this particular episode. I think this is going to be the third time now. The first two times I did this, I tried to create a class derived from our stat line component and use that so that we could leverage all of this additional logic, this pre-existing logic, and then just add in a little bit for the complex needs. No matter what I did, it completely broke the stat line. I could not get it to work ever. It's actually taken me almost 2 weeks to get this episode recorded because of that. Just limited time to work on it and the amount of time I spent having to figure that out. So, given that, I've gone through and decided I'm just going to add all of this into our basic stat line here. Anyways, to get started though, what do I mean by complex needs? Well, I mean adding in some different additional stats. Now, there is one I want to add to all stat lines, not just the player character, and that is for something down the line for bleeding damage. So it is going to be apparently hit the cap lock key there, a stat for representing the volume of blood in the character. So copy these. Now, I also want to add in, as I mentioned, these are going to be just for the player character. Things like calories, protein, fats, carbs, carbohydrates, but shorten it to carbs, and then finally vitamins. Vitamin. So obviously need to change our display names here. So blood, calories, protein, so on and so forth. So now with that, these, as I mentioned, are ones I want to use exclusively for the player character, with the exception of the blood value. I want to use that actually on pretty much everyone, but to that end, there is going to be some going to be some additional code we need to have in place to account for that. So now we've got those core stats, we need to actually add them to our stat line. So we're going to go f core stat space, and I'm actually going to copy this one because it doesn't have comment on the end. And I'm actually going to copy both of those lines so that I can do this quickly. Core stat blood, carbs, calories, fats, protein, vitamin. I probably spelled that wrong, but let's clean these up. And just for the interest of keeping the video on task, I'm going to go through and fix the tooltips for these off camera. But so we have these in. as the core stats we want to use for our complex needs. So actually, helps if I spell pragma right. Complex needs, and then pragma and region. I think that works. I'm pretty sure you can nest regions. No, you can't. Just like that, but oh well. So with that then, because we can't nest those, I'm going to move these into their own little section. So I'm just cleaning up my code here. So all right, so now that we have that, there is, as I mentioned, some other code we need to add. So one of the first things I want to do is bool uses complex needs, keep my naming convention equals false. Now we want to default that to false because we only want this on the player character. Now if you're doing this and you want it on all characters, that's fine. If you want to be able to change that, so like some NPCs need it, some don't, you want to expose this via uProperties and edit defaults anywhere. Or edit defaults only, sorry. Now, yes, this is a private bool, and we are going to be accounting for that. So in our public section, void set complex needs. Const bool reference be use complex. Now this is also a function I'm not going to be exposing to blueprints. This is going to be exclusively a C++ function because I don't want this exposed. Again, because for my setup I want this only on the player character. So we're going to do that. And now to enable that, we are going to go to our player character base class. I can't remember alphabetical order. And go to our constructor. And just in here, we're going to go no, was it get statline? Oh, not actually using that include, are we? Because we don't do any calls to that. It's all through the character class. Well, that's easy to fix. So again, just to go over and explain why I'm only wanting to do this in the player character is because this is going to be a lot of additional calculations, tick penalty, like tick events, things like that, and it can get pretty intense. And if you've got a bunch of characters on, like, that are in memory, active running, like actively running, it's going to be a performance hit. And also, I don't want to have to go to the extent of writing the behavior trees and all of the AI to account for the fact that, oh, now we need to think, okay, they're suffering from a protein deficiency, so let's have them try to go find a source of meat. Things like that. Like, that's, I just want to have the AI program to, like, oh, you're hungry? Go eat. Oh, you're thirsty? Go find a source of water. I don't want to have to worry about some additional complexity there. But I want the player to have to accommodate for that. And actually, I want the player to be able to do this through, well, to turn this on and off. So this is going to be converted into a new game setting. I covered in the last couple episodes. But for now, I'm just going to be setting it hard-coded to true. So, and that's simply because we're doing this here. Actually, no, I'm not going to... No, I will. Sorry, I'm going to leave that. We're going to do that in the next episode because this is already going to take more than one episode to cover all of this. So, but anyways, sidetracked a little bit there. So we've got here in our constructor, and the reason being for that is after our stat line is created, we're going to turn around and say, oh, by the way, turn on complex needs. And this is where it's actually something we need to do with begin play, but we'll add that, as I said, in the next episode. So now that part's done. We're actually done on the player character for now. We do need to go through, though, and add some additional functionality within a lot of functions. So first thing we're going to do, though, is we're going to go find our stat section where we have our tick stat, which is here. And you can see we've got tick stamina, hunger, thirst. Well, we need to also add in a void tick blood, const float reference delta time. And apparently I can't hit the right bracket. And then we need to add that in for our additional ones here. So void tick stat. Not tick stat, tick carbs. And actually, I'm just going to actually quickly create that definition. We'll have to deal with that in a second. But I'm going to copy paste this because we're going to be using this section quite a bit. Or that exact same. Void tick calories. If I could spell. Yeah. Void tick fats. Why are you having this? What? I think IntelliSense is having an aneurysm. All right, so now we've got that. Yeah, IntelliSense is just not having a good day today, it seems. So let's create these additional ones here. I think part of it is I'm not even sure if I have the Visual Studio plugin enabled. I'll have to check that. But okay, so we've got all of those. And then, well, we're just going to set up some basics for now on this one. So we've got tick blood. Blood.tick stat delta time. Now these are ones we're going to want to add some additional logic to as we go through. Things like your calories, you're going to want to have, okay, are we sprinting, things like that. Like this is why it's going to be taking a few episodes to get all of this set up, because we're going to have some logic that we need to do around that. And also, these stats are going to have a much larger max value. So, and I'm pretty sure, I'm like 99.9% sure I spelled vitamins wrong. So let me double check on that, because that is going to annoy me. No, I didn't. Okay. All right, so we have these basic ones in here. Now, as I mentioned, these stats are actually going to have much larger maxes and values because we need to have these things like you're looking at 2,500 calories a day is a typical consumption for an average human male. So we're going to need to use this method here. So equals F core stat so we have current, max, and the tick value. So we want our current, we're just going to say carbs, 5,000, 10,000, and minus 10. These are just some very approximate values. And I'm actually just going to go through and current value 2,500. We're going to say it's going to have a max value of 8. No, there's 10,000 people who eat 10,000 calories a day. Actually, these are all going to be 5,000. So now blood is one where we're going to keep it in the 0 to 1 range because its percentile is going to be used for something else. So we can use just the default constructor for that. And obviously I'm going to need to go through, do some math on these and figure things out. Like, okay, obviously we're going to need to adjust for daily consumption. So we need to have the same logic we applied to our hunger and thirst applied to these for the rate of decay. So what we're going to do here, we're going to save those. Now that we've got this basic setup, we've got our variables, our functions, and we've got our variables and functions for adding this in. We're going to start actually working on some of the additional logic. So first of all, we're going to go to tick stats. Tick stats. If B use complex needs, apparently I was typing something, uses complex needs, sorry. Then we're going to tick fats, delta time. I'm going to copy this so we can save some keystrokes. Tick protein. Tick carbs. Tick calories. And tick glutens. All right, so we've got all those new ticks added in there with the exception of blood. And we're just going to add that in to... no, we're going to have to add that before health. So we've got that added in there. Now we need to add that to our adjust stats, get percentiles, things like that. But I also want to add in some catch code. I was just trying to think of the best way to describe that, but just heat somebody. So I'm just trying to find them in here because I know we've got a few. Get stat percentile. Okay, so this one we don't need to worry about adding any catch code. Actually, no, I do. So with that, we're going to be working predominantly in our initial default. So what we're going to now add within here is a second switch statement. Now this is not efficient because, well, we're switching on something we've already switched on. It's the only way I've been able to think of to do this logically. This is probably going to get rewritten though. So actually, sorry, I completely missed the whole reason for this. So if B use complex needs, if not B use complex needs, we're going to have this code execute. Basically what we're doing here is if we've hit this default case and we're not using complex needs, we're just going to log an error. Because it's not a valid stat type. So technically this error is still valid for what we're trying to do here. However, if they are using, this is where we want to do the switch on stat. Now we've already caught health, hunger, stamina, and thirst, so we don't need to worry about those. Actually, we also need to add in up here, sorry, case e core stat blood. Return blood. Not percentile. So now we need to add in the other ones. And actually what we're going to do here, copy this warning because it and expand it a bit with complex needs called with invalid stat type. So now we've got that. So case e core stat vitamin, case e core stat. I hate IntelliSense. Health, stamina, hunger, thirst, blood, calories, protein, fats, carbs. So now we've got those 5 new stat types added in there. Return vitamin, percentile. Now obviously there's going to be, in the UI for however you want to present this, there's going to need to be some additional logic and handling for these complex needs, because they're not, well, they're going to return a 0 to 1 percentile, but they have a different use. So now what are we, calories, percentile, and I'm actually going to copy that last little bit because we're using that a lot. Return protein, percentile, return fats, percentile, return carbs, percentile. So just to walk through this, again, sort of partially rubber duck debugging, as well as just to help try and explain my logic and reasoning behind this. So we have what is a generic stat line we're using for everyone. As I'd mentioned at the start, I tried creating a player character only one that I didn't need to do basically an entire rewrite of both the stat line and how the TF character class is. I could, because a lot of what is derived from TF character, the player character doesn't need. But at the same time, it's a lot of effort for work that doesn't need to be done. But anyways, I couldn't create a derived class, so we're having to add this to our existing stat line. In here, we have our basic setup, where we added in our new universal core stat of blood. We've added that in. And actually, I want to add a Boolean to control if they're concerned about blood. Like, example, I know it's been requested as an AI, and toying with putting it in my game, I'm not sure, because I'm making a general survival game. You can put yourself in different situations, things like that. But zombies, they don't really bleed out. They're not worried about blood. So I want to be able to have a flag where you can turn that off for, depending on like your character type. But anyways, so with that, we added that into our base stats. I'll call that core, universal, however you want to word them. Then in what was this initial switch block, we have a, if using complex needs, we are going to, sorry, if not using complex needs, we're going to say, okay, we've got a stat type we're not worried about. I don't want to say, with unknown, sorry, not invalid, unknown stat type. But if we are, we're doing a secondary switch on that. I really hate nesting switches because they can be a performance hit. However, again, this is only on the player character. This is catching it there. Unless at a code level we decide to add in, well, I decide to add in another character that can use it. But either way, so if we do have complex needs, we then do a secondary switch off the same stat variable that's passed in. Because obviously we've already caught these first 5. We're going to look at our second 5. And if it's not either of those 10 different, is it 10? 1, 2, 3? Yeah, it is 10 now. 10 different stats, we then throw up an error message of get stat percentile with complex needs called with an invalid stat type. Excuse me. Just needed a drink there. So that adds that in. And really we're going to be using a similar setup to this. To the point I am going to... No, because the logging will mess up. I can't be bothered to fix that right now. Adjust stat. There we go. So we're going to use a similar setup here. So if use complex uses complex, and if not, switch on stat, copy our logging message and bring that down. Just that call with complex needs called with, again, these aren't invalid, they're unknown. I should fix unknown. I didn't fix both of them up at the top, did I? With unknown. Now, I'm going to just grab these, though, because it's a lot easier to fix that. And there we go. So, actually, return. Copy that. So, to just clean these up so it's actually got what we need. Now, one thing, just in case anyone is wondering, is we don't need to make any code changes to the way we set up our consumable. Why do I keep hitting Control V there? It's this place where I want to do it. Anyways, so we don't need to make any changes to our consumable item. And the reason being, items, consumable items, we have this map right here that uses that enum and a float value to determine what goes in. And we don't need to worry about that. Because this is all going to be something that's addressed at blueprint level, not at code level. So no changes are needed there, because we put that all in the eCore stat. Put that up here, actually. Sorry, I was just thinking about the... do we have an edit defaults only? Again, this property, I will update the tooltip off camera. And by default, I want can bleed equals true. All right. So now we've got that. Actually, let's go up here and just make sure we've got all of our stat related code updated. World temp change, just local offset, stat. Oh, we need to save our stats. So right, add blood dot get save string, right, dot raw data dot add. Now I'm trying to think, do we need to FB, yeah, it uses complex needs. I was just trying to think, can we avoid having to add this in? And yes, you can, because it's set. We might have to do some work around this one, because I'm not sure how that's going to work with being a game setting. We're going to have to make sure order of operations in the player character is correct. So I'm going to just copy that. Actually, no, I'm going to copy the whole line. UE5 calories, carbs, so I was just mentally doing the ABC song because I want to put these in alphabetical order for what we've got. If we add anything else, obviously it's going to just continue on as an additional order, like add it at the bottom. P, protein. Apparently I wiped out everything, not just the variable. So, and this is something to think about as you're working on your game, especially if you're going to get to a point where you're making a public release. I see so many games that every time they do an update, like release a new code update, it's like, oh yeah, this breaks save games. Yes, I understand sometimes that's inevitable because you make a drastic change to how game information is saved. But I see it happen way more often than it should, or than it's justifiable. And that's something to keep in mind whenever you're writing your save logic. Try to keep it in sort of this format where you're not changing it every time you need to add something, you're just adding it onto the end. Because then you can also have, like with this here, well, if the first save game, well, if a save game is loaded and it doesn't have blood or calories or anything like that, it's going to use the default values because we're updating an existing variable. So now I understand, like I said, there's going to be situations where you have no choice. You're going to have to break your save games and a new save is going to be required. And that is something I would actually also suggest, and I'm going to be covering it a little later when it comes to like getting out your first test build with versioning. You want to actually, in your save game, I would recommend storing a version tag. And then in there you can do a comparison. Like you set a minimum save game version that's supported. And then you can just say, these saves aren't supported. I won't even let you load them. So, but anyways, that's another entire video. I'm getting sidetracked there. But so in our save game here, we've added in our additional stats, and you can see I've continued with my index comment, so I can easily tell what index is getting thrown into the array. We've added 4 through 9, so we need to get those added in here. So, case 4, case 5, case 6, case 7, case 8, case 9. And I do understand a lot of this is repetitive. I'm not describing something new every single time, but this is how I plan on doing it. And actually 5 through 9, we can use the same logic we did for... actually, no, I'm just going... because they're not there. We only need to add it here. Because Actually, this is where going back to that game-breaking save. I'm trying to think how to... I'm just thinking if we need to add in what would be an index 10, 11, and 12, the order is going to change. If we start going something here. A complex need character. Actually, no, I know what to do. So I don't like using if else that much, but if else 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ret dot raw data dot add for int I equals 0, I less than 5, I plus plus. We're just going to do a really basic for loop here. And then add a comment. So what this is here, we have, let's just go to the update from string. We've got if we're not putting in the 3 expected values, we're logging an error. What I'm going to do here, if parts.num equals 0, we're just going to return. And the reason being for this is going back to our stat line. If we're using a non-complex need character, we're going to have 5 empty entries that parts is going to return with 0. I'm hoping. Excuse me. And they're going to get passed through into this function with 0. We're doing that on purpose so we don't want to log an error. But with that, so we've added those 5 in because yeah, so basically we want this array here of raw data to always contain the same number, because we have this loop down here, this switch statement that we're going through comparing, it's a for loop and a switch statement. We have this loop that we're going through that we're checking and applying information based off that. So anyways, with that though, we have no for is our blood. Okay, so I'm just going to copy the update from string part. 5 is calories. Carbs. Fats. And this is why I was thinking to keep these in alphabetical for the initial. So protein. And finally, vitamins. Add our breaks in there. And actually thinking about it, we can also add some safety nets around these. Now, I understand at a C++ level, this is valid. You do not need to use your curly brackets for a one-line if statement. I hate that though, because it adds a level of, I don't want to say confusion, it adds a level of observation that's needed. Because if, say, I've done this is valid, like I said, a C++ level, I don't need to use curly brackets for a single line if. Sorry, for the body of a single line if. I want to make sure I use the right terms there. However, say another developer comes in and they want to add something else in there. Well, now they need to go through, okay, let's add the braces, whatever. If you're writing an if statement, always start, even with one line, format it correctly. Now, the other one, and I'm not going to get into the argument about it because I deal with it at work all the time, is the formatting of your if statement. As you can see, I like the open brace on one line, content on another line, close brace on another line. I deal with it at work where some of my colleagues do what I consider the incorrect format. And I will clarify the reason why I dislike this. It's not an easy vertical connection. You do this, and you can clear as day see, okay, this is where it starts. I put my cursor here, I scroll down. If you notice, every other way, for loops, like code, like actual function declarations, it's always done that way. Personal preference, I understand at a compilation level, doesn't matter. It's white space, the compiler ignores it. But the reason why I will use this, and I will die on this hill that this is the correct way, is it allows you to easily just scan through and go, okay, this is where it ends. Anyways, that little rant out of the way. So I was thinking initially we could use a format like this, like this here. However, I didn't want to do that because, again, what happens if we add in item 10, item 11, item 12? So we have in here a double point fail safe, 2 points. We have a flag here of if we're using complex needs, we're going to apply it. And we have here, if we're using complex needs, we're going to save it. If not, we are going to artificially fill in the saved array with, well, in this case, 5 empty strings. And that is so that we can know definitively index 10 is whatever the next thing we add to our save string or our save logic. So, yes, I understand we're saving a empty string. It's a little bit of memory. However, we're already looking at games nowadays that have like 50, 60, 100 meg, 200 meg save games. You're talking about bytes at this. Like the level of memory storage consumption in your hard drive space 5 empty strings takes, it's nothing to worry about. So we've updated that as well, so we're good there. But anyway, so as I was saying, we've got these 2 points of failsafe. So if we're using complex needs, we're going to apply these. And then if we have using complex needs set here, but for some reason this was used for the save, well, we'll go to, it's right there, I don't need to worry about it. Update from save string. If parts is num, we're just going to say ignore it. Actually, with that failsafe, I'm going to those other 2 failsafes. I'm going to get rid of that because no, I want some logging if there's a problem there. So yep. Okay, so I'm just trying to think if there's anything else, because I know we're at 45 minutes already. I want to try to build at least to make sure I haven't broke anything in the code. And if I have, try to figure out how to fix it. Alright, so let's try a quick build. But yeah, so going back to the actual core of what this is, as I've mentioned, I'm trying to make a pseudo-realistic. It's not 100% accurate. Obviously, it's a game. You can't be 100% accurate to real life, but a survival simulator. And I want to be able to have various different situations that you could put yourself in, sort of like, it's post-apocalyptic, the world's ended. You're now having to scavenge for food, you're having to try and build shelter. It's zombie apocalypse. It's you get stranded in the wilderness. You're abducted by aliens and you wake up in the middle of a field and you have no idea where you are. Things like that. So, what I'm actually going to do, because I want to make sure this is all working, EU property visible anywhere, and meta equals allow private access equals true. I want this just so that we can look at it in the player character. What are you complaining about? Oh, I missed a bracket, comma. So we can see when we launch into the editor. So I'm going to do one more quick build. But yeah, going back to the whole purpose for this, like I said, I'm trying to do as close to realistic as possible survival game. That's why I'm dealing with things like body temperature, coverage, shelter, things like that. And I want to be able to make this expandable, as I've mentioned a couple of times, for like mod support and that, and people can create their own scenarios, things like that, and from there see how they could do. Like I love games like Project Zomboid for the survival aspects, and things like original mod DayZ and stuff like that. So okay, so we're gonna hit play here, and I'm gonna see if this implodes. Alright, well, everything's working there. So now let's go to character and our stat line, and we're going to see if our complex needs code there worked. Use complex needs. It is on. Okay, so you can see these are also ticking. They are ticking down. Obviously, we need to, like I said, go through and add in the defaults to not defaults, the day length logic to these values, but I also need to go through and do some math and work out, okay, you need 2,500 calories a day. How long in game time is that going to take to burn down? Because if you eat 1,000 calories in a day, 10,000 calories in a day, and you don't burn that off, well, that's body weight. But anyways, sorry, getting a little sidetracked. I know this is going to be a multi-part process here, because I do also want to extend to have some additional logic. Like I want to have it so that if your blood is below a certain percentile, you start getting screen effects, things like that. But I'm going to end this episode here. As always, if there's any comments, questions, concerns, suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thank you for watching, folks, and I will catch you in the next episode.